Dudes and dudettes, how are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to What's the Damage, the good old WTD question mark here on my channel. You know, the longest running series on this YouTube channel. My very first video ever, like 6 years ago, was What's the Damage, and I had no idea that it would since then branch out into a playlist with hundreds of videos and me giving rants and stuff, you know, controversial opinions, but that's what this is for. And speaking of controversial opinions, you know, and controversial topics in general, I'm going to be covering something today that I actually haven't gotten into in over a year or so, you know. I believe that the last time I talked about this was right on the onslaught of when it actually began, you know. I'm going to be covering the coronavirus disease 2019, also known as COVID-19, you know, which is the ongoing pandemic that's actually still, you know, a thing right now. You know, we haven't really completely gotten rid of it. We're still going through the pandemic period, although it's not as bad as it was a few years ago. I'm pretty sure you guys know that it started back in 2019 in Wuhan, China, back when somebody decided to eat a freaking bat and got a random virus, you know, that was worse than rabies and started to spread across China, then other parts of Asia, Europe, and eventually it literally overtook the entire planet, you know. The COVID-19 pandemic stands right now as the 5th worst pandemic in human history, behind, of course, the worst ones like the Black Death and the Spanish flu and the plague of, how do you pronounce it, Justinian or something of the sort, you know, and of course the still ongoing HIV/AIDS pandemic, you know, still happening right now, but it has, you know, there have been leaps and bounds, you know, in vaccines and cures, but still, the COVID-19 pandemic itself was very deadly, or still is deadly, you know, because right now, there has been a grand total of, and get ready for this, 641,361,040 confirmed cases of COVID, you know, in people, of which there has been an estimated 28 million deaths, you know, from that, you know, which is the highest right now that we can estimate. But as of right now, you know, 2022, the actual real confirmed reported deaths are 6,633,213, you know, so it is very deadly. It is not to be trifled with, you know, and it is still going on right now. But the thing is that when the COVID actually happened in 2019, it was this, you know, nobody knew what it was, and it was killing everybody left and right, you know, and it was just this huge monster, you know, and the symptoms were very scary because they could range from, you know, like very barely visible to actually very, for example, it could range from undetectable that you wouldn't even know you had it to actually very visible and really deadly, you know. So there are a few different symptoms, you know, for COVID, like for example, you know, fever, cough, headache, fatigue, you know, breathing difficulties, loss of smell and taste, you know. It actually depends on it. Could just be a dry cough, or it could be an actual full-on flu, you know. So it really does depend. I have a few tidbits of info for you guys here in case you don't know. Symptoms can begin 1 to 14 days after exposure to it, you know, and at least a third of people who are infected don't even develop symptoms that are noticeable, so you might have it and not even know. Depends on your immune system. And of the people who do develop symptoms, here we go. 81% of them develop mild to moderate symptoms, you know, up to like mild pneumonia, for example, and 14% can develop severe symptoms, you know. We're talking like dyspnea, hypoxia, or, you know, more than a few lung problems, you know, and 5% can develop critical symptoms, which could range from respiratory failure and shock to, you know, multi-organ dysfunction. So the older you are and the weaker your immune system is, the more susceptible you are to getting COVID, you know, and of course, the mortality rate is much higher for those who are elderly. So the younger you are, kind of like the less of a chance you have of dying from it, but still, it's not an exact science, you know, you never really know. And there are people who still continue to experience effects months after being infected with it, you know, so it's pretty crazy. There are still studies underway right now to further investigate the long-term effects of it, you know, but right now we are sitting at a very, I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but it is still here. The fatality rate for the COVID-19 virus right now is 1.03%, you know, so like I said before, it was much worse when it actually began. Many people were dying. We didn't know why. There was no cure. There were no vaccines. Everybody was scrambling, you know, to get in quarantine, you know, and do social distancing, but ultimately it still claimed the lives of many people. Now, the virus itself was very deadly, you know, it was very dangerous, and, you know, being infected, you know, I mean, even if you had a strong immune system, you were kind of scared to find out that you contracted it, you know, but the actual pandemic was really what killed us, man, you know, not literally, but really crippled the world a lot, because, you know, there were a lot of very severe social and economic disruptions around the world, you know, and it was actually considered to be the largest global recession since the Great Depression in the US back in the 1930s, I think, you know, around the Prohibition era. So, you know, widespread supply shortages, you know, and there were also food shortages. Everything was disrupted, you know, like the supply chain. So it was really hard to, that's why people were stockpiling on, for some reason, toilet paper. I don't really know. They were really worried about taking dumps, you know, but everybody was going everywhere and buying as much as they could. It was like pretty much they were pretty much creating doomsday bunkers, you know. It's almost like it was like an apocalypse. Everybody was stocking up, you know. It was really crazy, you know. But then again, the reduced human activity did also see an unprecedented population decrease, you know, so it was kind of, you know, scary in that degree there, you know. I don't know, man. I kind of feel like it kind of wiped us out a little bit. Maybe there was way too many people. The population around the world was crazy, so maybe that's why they decided to just kind of reduce it to a certain degree. I don't really know. Sorry. Let me put it in a different way. Sometimes I feel like the COVID was kind of like a way to reduce the human population. There were so many of us, and it kind of wiped out a bunch to maybe balance it out. It's a morbid way to look at it, but I don't know how nature works. You know, maybe this whole thing was just meant to happen, you know. But of course, you know, there were other things that we needed to there were other precautions that we needed to take, you know. We have to start wearing masks in public and really washing our hands a lot more and using alcohol to disinfect our skin, you know. So it was pretty crazy. So many other stuff too, you know. Basically we had to do social distancing, which is when we, you know, stay away from people, stay indoors, don't interact, you know. It was crazy, man. You know, it really caused a lot. And the reason that I'm recording this video here is because there has been a recent variant of the COVID-19 which has resurfaced, you know, and it's starting to affect other people. We had to spend so many months, more than a year practically, you know, at least here in Brazil, wearing masks in public, you know. We couldn't go to work without a mask. We couldn't get on a bus without a mask, get into an Uber, walk down the street, you know, go into supermarkets. Everywhere you went, people were wearing face masks, you know. And when the law was finally passed, at least here in São Paulo, for us to not use it anymore, it felt so relieving, you know. It felt so good to finally be able to breathe fresh air again. But now here in São Paulo where I live, there is a new law now. I'm not sure it's a law, it's just like a mandatory thing, which is a law. Basically the governors are telling everybody to start wearing the masks again in public places and also on public transportation like buses, you know. And the thing is that I am not exactly as worried now as I was before, because we haven't, like, there have been vaccines, you know, for the COVID, you know, they have been widespread, you know. There have been several that have already been approved and distributed in various countries, you know. So there were many mass vaccination campaigns. So it's very, very controllable now, you know. COVID-19 is not the spearhead monster that it was years ago when it started, man. We have the means to combat it now. We have the resources we have. I'm not entirely sure there is a cure yet, but maybe the vaccine works as a cure, you know. Once you got it, your immune system is going to be strong enough to fight it, and maybe you're not going to contract it again, you know. It has become a regular flu. There is a way to combat it now, so everybody needs to just chill the hell out. One of the things that I think is even more dangerous than the COVID itself is this thing called fake news, you know, the spreading of false information, you know, to create panic, especially on social media, which does lead to a lot of issues, you know, outside of it, you know, like it can cause a lot of political tension, you know, within people who support a certain political figure or another, you know. That has really intensified. And because it was developed in Asia, you know, and the virus spread from there, you know, it has raised a lot of, you know, racial and geographic discrimination, you know, xenophobia against Asians, you know, health equity, and this really crazy balance between public health imperatives and individual rights, you know. It's this whole crazy thing. But the thing is that spreading false information can be just as bad as even contracting the virus itself, you know, because a doctor here in Brazil recently said, you know, that, you know, like I myself addressed a little bit earlier, you know, the COVID now has become a flu, guys, you know. It is like the swine flu, you know. It's like, it's not exactly as common as like a common cold or anything, but the point is that if you get it, there is a way to combat it, you know. If you were unfortunate enough to contract COVID back in the early days of the onslaught of the outbreak, you know, then yes, I can imagine how scared you would be, especially if you survived it, you know. The symptoms can get very, very bad, especially if you're over 60. So I know it's tough, you know, but after all of this time, after years, you know, because whenever a virus outbreak, a virus breaks out, you know, there are no vaccines, you know, there's no cure, there's no way for you to combat the symptoms. But, you know, once it happens, and as morbid as it is to say, the more people die from it, the more that scientists, researchers, and doctors can study it and come up with vaccines to combat it, you know? So we had to go through the pandemic so our, you know, our collective minds could come together and create a vaccine that would save other people from dying, you know? Because I believe that the death toll would have been much higher. Remember, there is nearly 30 million of estimated deaths. Between like 16 million to 28 million people were estimated to have died, with about 6 million or so confirmed to have actually died, you know? So it was very deadly, but you know, it's not that these deaths had to happen. Don't take it that way. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's because they happened that we have been able to come up with vaccines to save other people from dying from it, you know? So you have to research an ongoing pandemic to come up with vaccines so it doesn't happen again, you know? You can't come up with the vaccine immediately once it happens because you have to study it, you know? You have to understand how it works and how it affects the body and breaks it down and how the symptoms develop, you know? So right now, COVID-19 is very, very combative. You know, it's not as bad as it was a few years ago when it actually began taking over the world. So I am against wearing masks in public. I think it's really stupid. I still do though, don't get me wrong. I hate it, you know, like if I have to wear it in a closed space or when I'm working, you know, trying to teach, you know, with the mask over my mouth like this, you know, I start to have freaking breathing problems. It sucks, man. But hey, if my boss tells me to, I'll wear it. No problem, but I hate it, you know? If you don't have COVID and you're in a place that you know other people don't have it, then don't wear it, man. It just makes you look stupid. But that I understand that there are people who are much more paranoid than others, especially if you're elderly, but still, man, that's just what I think, you know? So our bodies have now, even if you've got COVID, you know, our bodies have built up the enzymes or the antibodies, let's say, to combat the symptoms of COVID. And even if it hasn't, you know, there are vaccines ready. If you are developing symptoms of COVID and you feel like you have it, you go for a checkup and it is confirmed that you do with the cotton swabs in your nose, you can get vaccinated instantly, you know. So it is something that's very easy to be combated now. So there is no reason for so much widespread panic and misinformation, man, you know. It is very, very docile now compared to what it was before. COVID-19 is not the monster that it was before. I think that's like the third or fourth time I've said this in this video, you know? So everybody needs to just chill the hell out. Has it come back? Yes, it's already among us once again. There's a different variant, you know, but we are ready for it this time. So just chill, okay? Don't spread fake news and don't try to create widespread panic like Donald Trump did, for example, you know? So that's it, guys. That has been my video for today. I just wanted to spread a little bit of information, you know? So take care of yourself, okay? If you feel the need to wear masks, go ahead and wear it, you know? Always wash your hands and don't come into too close contact with people, you know? Use alcohol to disinfect yourself, you know? If you have to social distance, quarantine, you know, just chill, and that's it. We got through this once and we can get through it again, okay? All we need to do is just chill as a collective species and just keep it on the download. But anyway, that's it, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think, you know, about this. You know, if you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell too to know exactly what time I upload, and it's all good. I'm sorry about the possible crappy lighting. It's because it's gonna rain soon. I'm actually really scared of that. It's not looking too good over there in the sky, but it's all good. That's it, guys. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Stay safe out there and roll the outro screen.